All right. Well, welcome everybody. We're excited to have you here with us on this beautiful Tuesday afternoon. We're here, of course, for our What's Up Tonight Skies class that's open to everyone in the public. Tonight and every Tuesday and Thursday at 2:30 p.m. you'll be able to learn from one of our world-class astronomy presenters and then be able to step out into your backyard and look at some of the things that maybe they're telling you about. My name is Drew Bush, and I'm the Director of Programs at the Fairbanks Museum and Planetarium. And I just wanted to let you know, of course, that we're excited to have you here, whether you're on YouTube or whether you're on Kingdom Access Television or your local cable affiliate, or even if you're in here with us on Zoom. And this is just one of the few classes we offer live in particular so that you guys can ask your questions. So if you're on Kingdom Access or cable or YouTube, you can email your questions to me at dbush@fairbanksmuseum.org. That's dbush, B-U-S-H. And if you're in Zoom, you can, of course, chat with us using the Q&A button or the chat button down at the bottom of your screen. And we look forward to taking your questions today as I turn things over now to Bobby Farlice-Rubio, one of our talented astronomy presenters. Thank you, everyone.
All right, everybody. Good afternoon, and thank you, Drew. And I know if you live here in Vermont, you probably didn't do any stargazing last night because we were under a deluge of rain. But it looks like the skies are going to be clear enough for you to see this. And if you live elsewhere in the country, who knows? But let me jump over to Stellarium, which is the free software that you can use to follow along or teach yourself the stuff that's going to be in the night sky before it gets dark so that you can find it more easily later. I'm going to put that on the screen now. And Stellarium is right now showing us what's going on outside. Of course, this is a generated background, so our trees still don't have their leaves yet. And our grass is just greening today, but not quite as tall as it looks there. But I'm going to hit the forward on the clock, and if you look down at the bottom of the screen, you can see what date and the time, and it is showing us it's after 2:30. And if I hit the L key, it's the same as hitting the fast forward button. You can go faster through time, and hopefully now you can see the sun seemingly setting in the west as our planet is rotating away in the opposite direction. So, like it's been for the last few weeks, the first thing you're going to notice as soon as the sun sets is the brilliant planet Venus. That is not going to need much help in getting you to find it because Venus is going to be brighter than anything else. Only the full moon can exceed Venus's brightness, and we're already a week past the full moon. In fact, the moon won't be rising until just before midnight tonight. So it's a last quarter moon, which means that if the clouds clear up, you'll have very clear skies and a very dark sky condition, which will be good for finding some of the more obscure objects in the sky, which I want to feature one of them tonight. Well, if you look now in Stellarium, you might see something that rivals Venus in brightness. It's not nearly as bright, but it is also visible in the twilight hours. This is the brightest of all the nighttime stars. We call it Sirius, or the dog star, or the nose of Canis Major. So these are the two bright objects that you might see in the sky, even before you consider it to be dark. But let's take those highlights off and let's see what else will be visible as soon as it actually does get dark. You can see stars emerging, and if you look where Sirius is, in between Sirius and Venus, we get to see the great hunter Orion, which even though we consider that a wintertime constellation, it's still early enough in spring to see him. But as you see him heading towards the west every night, he's going to be lower and lower, and in a couple of weeks, you will not see him at all at this time in the evening. But I think, do we have a question coming in there?
Oh, I was just typing to welcome everyone.
All right. Oh, sorry. I'll let me know when there's questions. I don't want to interrupt again. But so here we are when the twilight has almost completely faded. It's about 8:30, and you can see where Orion is. You can see super bright Venus, and you can see the nose of the dog, Canis Major. So since I mentioned that, let me focus on that little dog there, or should I say big dog? Because after all, we're talking about Canis Major. There is a Canis Minor, and I'll show you that one in a second. But zooming in on where that star Sirius is, I like to pretend that that's the nose of a big dog. Here are his eyes staring at us. and here his ears listening to us. So if you make this pentagon shape with the stars, I think it looks pretty much like a dog's face, like a terrier, perhaps, that kind of a face, maybe a schnauzer. And then here's the front legs of this little canine in the sky, and here his hind legs. And over here are the stars that I like to imagine are his waggly tail moving so fast. You can actually see motion lines like in a comic strip. So there is the big dog, Canis Major, and that star Sirius may be familiar to many people for a lot of reasons. Sirius XM satellite radio, or Sirius Black in the Harry Potter stories. Remember, Sirius Black is the wizard who can turn himself into a dog. So that tells us that J.K. Rowling, the author of those Harry Potter books, must have gone to a lot of planetarium shows. She's definitely a fan of the stars based on the names of her characters. But Sirius is the brightest star in the night sky. And I want to add one more cool thing about Sirius. Sirius is out during the daytime in the summer. And the name Sirius comes from the Greek word for searing hot, searing heat, like pan-seared trout at a fancy restaurant. So if you know the name Sirius means burning hot one, like the ancient Greeks did, and then you take into account the fact that this star is out during the daytime, during the hottest time of year in July, the ancients associated this bright star with the heat of the summer. And we still use an expression that goes back thousands of years to talk about the hottest time of the summer as the dog days. This is the dog behind the dog days of summer, this Canis Major constellation. And Sirius is the reason why. Searing heat from that star. Now, just to be fair, that is not the reason why we have the seasons and why it gets hot in the summer. Sirius's light is very bright, but it does not change our weather. It is 9 light years away. And that means that the light from that star takes 9 years to reach us. So it's definitely too far away to have an effect on our weather. But it is a very bright star that you will easily find during this time of year. And a trick to finding that star Sirius, if you are totally lost, is to remember Orion and his fancy belt and use the 3 stars of Orion's belt and go behind Orion, and you'll see the dog's nose following him faithfully. But since I mentioned Canis Major, I've got to mention Canis Minor, which means the little dog. But in my mind, I only see 2 stars, the bright one being Procyon right here. And with that other star, it's a well-worn joke, but I think Canis Minor is a dachshund, a wiener dog. What else can we draw with just 2 bright stars? A little hot dog, perhaps. But there isn't much to Canis Minor. But the thing to remember is that that star Procyon is very bright, and that star is right above where the big dog, Canis Major, is. So Procyon for the little dog, Canis Minor, and then we have Sirius for the big dog, Canis Major. So these are things that are visible during the winter, but as we slowly transition through spring, we're still seeing them in the sky. And I want to make sure you're paying attention to those stars, but I also want to welcome in some new constellations that were not visible during the winter time. Let me take the names out because it's better to have a little bit of a surprise. But if I zoom way out in Stellarium and I look pretty high up in the southeastern sky, you will see something that vaguely resembles a hook or a sickle shape. Maybe you'll just first see this bright star called Regulus. The Harry Potter fans are now perking up again. Regulus, isn't that Sirius's brother in the Harry Potter stories? Yes, he is, Regulus Black. And it's also the heart of Leo the Lion, one of our most ancient constellations, one that goes back to the earliest civilizations on Earth, like the Egyptians. In fact, some paleontologists and archaeologists have, pardon me, excuse me, let me clear my throat before the lions roar. But they have speculated, we don't know for sure because there is no written record to validate this, but some folks think that the constellation of Leo the Lion may be what inspired the building of the Sphinx in Egypt. So now that I've put up the connect the dot lines, I'm connecting just the brightest stars of Leo the Lion. And this is a constellation that actually really does look like a lion. It's not that difficult to see the picture if you put it all together, but Regulus is its brightest star. Think of Regulus as the heart of the lion. And then if you go up above, you'll see this very obvious sickle hook shaped formation. And I'm going to take those lines out so that you can see how connecting with this dot as the lion's nose, we get an eye and a mane, and it looks like the classic image of a lion, just like the two lions that sit in front of the Fairbanks Museum. And here is the heart of the lion, and you can imagine his front paws stretched out near his heart. And then if you draw a line with the Regulus, you can find this star that would make the bottom of his hind quarters, so creating this trapezoid right here for his body. And then you have the second brightest star of Leo way out here. It's called Denebula, which is an Arabic word that means tail. And well, that makes perfect sense. It's on the tail of the lion. And you can see if you add that to the picture, to that trapezoid that makes his body, that makes a long tail out here. And then just below that tail are the two hind legs. So I don't always agree with the illustrations that Stellarium has installed, but in the case of Leo the lion, what they've installed almost perfectly matches what I see with my imagination. So there is a constellation that goes back at least 5,000 years. How cool is that? When we can look at a constellation that the folks that were building the pyramids may have recognized instantly, and we recognize it. Hopefully you will recognize it now instantly too. It's pretty cool to be able to think of something that someone who lived so long ago also imagined. And that's why I love studying the stars, because it's the one thing that has changed the least in human culture and history over time. The constellation names have stayed relatively, constant, and every culture has their own names, but people tend to keep those names alive no matter how much changes on the ground. We all speak different languages than our ancestors did hundreds of years ago, but we might still be seeing the exact same pictures in the stars. And Leo is one of those very ancient constellations. And is interesting if you think about it from the Egyptian context. Egypt is in northern Africa, and you might think that today there's no lions in Egypt, but there used to be. All around the Mediterranean, there used to be lions as recently as 1,000 years ago. And I also learned that there were lions in Greece and Europe up until 1,000 years ago. So when you hear those ancient myths like Hercules fighting the Nemean lion, that might sound weird because lions don't live in Europe today, but during the time of the ancient Greeks, maybe getting eaten by a lion wasn't as rare as you might think. So those stories and the association with lions in Europe comes to the fact that lions got made extinct in medieval times in Europe, and in Africa is just the only place where those lions can still survive. So Leo the lion, a harbinger of worrying about endangered and extinct species perhaps, but actually something that connects us with some of the oldest structures on Earth, like the Sphinx in Egypt. So let me take that picture out of the way and give you a chance to see. The ultimate test is if you can see the lion with your own eyes in the sky. That's the only one that matters, the picture you make with your own brain. So you can use Stellarium, you can use their illustrations, but you really don't know a constellation until you are out there under the real stars. And I hope all of you get a chance to see Leo. You'll have many months during the spring and even early summer. But I want to mention something else important about that star, Regulus. I'm going to put up a line that we call the ecliptic. Other folks might know it as the zodiac or the horoscope line. This line, as you can see on the bottom of the screen, it says ecliptic of date. This is the line that the sun, the visible planets, and the moon seem to follow as they progress through our sky. Now, this line is actually the plane of the solar system, and the planets are going around the sun in almost a plane, almost on the same level, so they all appear in the same direction. But Regulus, the star, is very close to that ecliptic line. So without knowing where the zodiac line is, without knowing where it is, just by seeing Regulus, you can estimate where that is. And the sun will be covering up this part of the sky, meaning the Earth will orbit around the sun so that Leo will be behind the sun come the end of, actually the beginning of August. So at that time, July and August, you won't see Leo anymore because he'll start to fade away into the twilight, just like Orion is going to do by the end of this month. So Leo is going to be visible for the first half of summer, roughly, but all of spring. So go out there and check him out. Now, Leo is an easy one. I hope that you get encouraged when you see Leo the lion, because the next constellation I'm going to show you is one you may have heard of, but is one that is very difficult to see. In fact, it's a constellation that has at its brightest part, not a star, but a cluster of stars. So maybe you think I'm talking about the Pleiades cluster that I mentioned last time, but I'm talking about a cluster called the Beehive or the Precipe, like the manger. I'm trying to get it to highlight here in Stellarium. It's just giving me the individual stars. So let me see if I can zoom in on this little fuzzy patch of light. There's actually an open cluster of stars. So this cluster, it has a name, the Beehive. It's not popping up here in Stellarium. The Beehive cluster is actually brighter than any of the stars in Cancer the Crab, a constellation with a very unfortunate name. Just to give you some background, Cancer, the disease, is named after the crabs. And Cancer is the Latin word for a crab. If you are a Spanish speaker, you may know cangrejo means crab. It's a very similar word. So Cancer, the crab, I'm sorry, because of all the disease that has taken so many of our loved ones away, is associated with that, but it's really not a disease. It's just a crab in the sky. And its brightest part is that cluster called the Beehive. The rest of it is actually pretty pitiful. In fact, I hate to say this. I don't want to defame any constellations, but Cancer the Crab is definitely the hardest one to see. Here are some of the brightest stars highlighted, and you have to have one imagination to be able to turn it into image like that. But what I do want you to focus on is the fact that there's this cool little fuzzy patch, that Beehive cluster in the middle. That is the thing that Cancer is cool for seeing. And if you can't find Cancer, can't blame you. It's not easy to see that guy. Check it out. It's made of a very dim stars. I like to pretend that these are the two eyes on the crab, and here are his claws standing out there, and maybe these stars make his legs. But I'll be honest, Cancer is not a magnificent constellation, but it's in between two very easy to see constellations. Leo the Lion over here, and one that I've mentioned in previous shows, previous broadcasts, webcasts. Here are the Gemini twins, another easy pair to see, partly because they have such bright stars for their heads. So if you find the Gemini twins, which will be above Orion and above that little dog, Canis Minor, they're easy to find. And they actually do look like twins standing side by side. So the Gemini pair, easy to find. The Lion, Leo, also easy to find. Let them frame for you, like bookends, the difficult to find Cancer the Crab. And then you can, be proud of yourself if you can show people where Cancer the Crab is. Your obscure constellations. I guess we could call them deep cuts constellations. So, Drew, did we get any questions from anybody out there?
Yeah, one question. If somebody's wondering if you can turn on sort of the direction markers and the horizon line so they can get a sense of how to find this on their own.
Okay, well, I've zoomed out to show you the zone of the sky that we're talking about. I'll put that ecliptic line up. Leo is over here at this time, which is around 8:30. He'd be due south. And the Gemini are in the southwest alongside Orion and Sirius and the big dog. And so just about south by southwest, not the music festival, of course, but right there in that direction is where you'll find Cancer the Crab at 8:30. But if you stay up late, you'll see that can change. And like every constellation, he'll be heading towards the west as the night goes on. Or I should say every constellation in this direction. So I hope that answers your question. South by southwest, that's where the most seasonal constellations are for our latitude. Mm-hmm. And in future webcasts, we'll be going into other parts of the sky, like in the north, where constellations are visible the entire year, as opposed to just for some seasons.
Yeah, and just wanted to remind folks before we wrap up, if you have questions, feel free to put them in our Q&A if you're in Zoom, or you can chat them over there too, where somebody already asked where this program was, which I sent them the link, of course.
Great.
And if you're on, Kingdom Access or your local cable television or YouTube, feel free to email me, dbush@fairbanksmuseum.org. Maybe I'll turn it over to Bobby for his last thoughts on tonight's skies, and then we'll see if we get a few questions, and if not, we'll wrap up.
Well, this is all about evening sky stuff, but I should mention something that's going to become part of our summer sky. You can get a sneak preview of if you stay up very, very late, or should I say, get up very, very early. You actually have a chance to see a beautiful rendezvous of planets. But look at what I've done in Stellarium. This is in the southeast, but this is 5 a.m. So maybe not a lot of folks have reason to get up this early at this time of year. But as we get increasingly longer days, the sun is rising earlier and earlier. And you may want to get out there and see what will be rising just before the sun. You'll get that moon, which is right here, but right above the moon, you might think they're very bright stars, but we have planet Jupiter, planet Saturn, and planet Mars in this little trio that'll be lined up just like this tomorrow morning. And the moon will be right underneath the middle planet, right there next to Saturn. But don't expect that every morning, because if you wait till, let's say, Thursday morning, boop, the moon will be under Mars instead of under Saturn. So this, if you got up early this morning, you would have seen the moon on that side of the trio. So remember that the moon moves quickly through the sky. It's always in a different spot. But those three planets are going to be dancing with the stars right before sunrise for the next couple of months. And then slowly, as the sky shifts with the season, those three planets will be visible in the evening of the late summer. So how cool is that? You have to wake up at 5 to see them now. But if you stay up till 8 or 9 in July and August, you'll see them then as well. So one more question, Drew.
Yeah, this might be our final question. Real quick, what am I seeing? Dunsky's asked, real quick, what am I seeing that is super bright in the southwest sky mid-January?
That probably was still Venus. Venus was becoming visible in the winter and is now at its greatest distance from the sun. It's actually starting to return towards the sun. But if you were out in mid to late January, you would have already been able to see Venus closer to the horizon than it is now at sunset. So I'm guessing that's what you saw. But remember, you might have also been seeing Sirius, which was in the southeast. Oh, actually, we're in the wrong time of day. This is 5 a.m. So watch this as I'm going to zoom backwards through time, something that I hope you never see happening in the real sky, because we'll have big problems. If everything is rising in the west, that'll be, well, a new day on Earth. But as I'm backing up through time, I want to remind you that right now we're going to see Sirius with Orion in the southwest. But in January, that bright star Sirius would have also been rising in the southeast in the evening. So if that was the question, Drew, was it what they saw in the west in January? Okay, that was probably Venus. And you would have had Sirius on almost the opposite side of the sky in the east. But now Venus and Sirius are getting closer to each other. And that's all due to how the planets and the Earth move through the zodiac and how those things rearrange themselves. So I wasn't going to go into all this nitty gritty detail, but every star that you see rising in the east will rise 4 minutes earlier every day. So if you add that up every day, 4 minutes earlier, eventually the star that'll be rising in the east in the evening will be later on in the year setting in the west at the same time in the evening. And that's what causes our seasonal shift with the stars. That's why we don't see Orion during the middle of the summer. So I think we're going to wrap things up, but I do see another question coming through, or maybe not. So let me know, Drew, if we have any other questions.
Oh, I think we're good. That was just me replying to one of our attendees. But I wanted to, of course, thank everybody again for being here for our What's Up Tonight Skies broadcast. I'm really excited, of course, that we were all here, and a warm thanks to Bobby Farlice-Rubio for conducting today's class. And, just feel free to check out all of our online programs at fairbanksmuseum.org. And I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of your day, and that you get out there tonight and you start looking for these things that Bobby has been pointing out to you.
All right. Yeah. Thank you, Drew. I hope the weather stays clear tonight. And I wish you all a great afternoon and keep looking up.
Good night.